I was telling Sally, I kind of felt like I was in high school again or college because I stayed up late well, I guess I won't say late. I won't say I stayed up all night, but I stayed up later than I usually do working on the slide presentation. And it's been a lot of fun to go back and look at some old slides, and I've only scratched the surface of what I have. So it's neat to organize them again. Some of you may have seen some of these before. I think they're some pretty good shots, so you might enjoy it anyways. And then there's plenty of you that are newer to the to the program, so I'm happy to share them with you. I guess wanted to ask me about when I went into the Peace Corps. That's a good place to start. I was in I arrived in Nepal right at the very beginning of 1998. And it's a 2-year stint. So I, plus 2 years plus 3 months of training. So I got finished in May or so. And well, I guess as a teaser for what I could do a next program, assuming you wanted. From there, I flew to China and took the Trans-Siberian all the way back to Amsterdam. So that's not about that. That's not in this presentation. This is all about Nepal. Oh, a couple people still waiting to get in. All right. So
that would be a good presentation for another time.
Right. I won't try to do it all at one time here. So let me start by sharing my screen. Bear with me a second. Okay. That's not what I wanted to share. I was trying to help Joanne out. But here we are. So you see the world map. Thumbs up. Yeah. Okay. So Nepal, most of you probably are know, but it's in South Asia. It's between India and China. So between two of the Asian superpowers. It's a long, skinny country. And there it is. Maybe that it's I think the state of Tennessee is a good comparison. Nepal's a little bit longer, but the shape and the area is pretty close. And it's a very diverse country because it goes from the Indian lowlands down here up to the mountains. The highest mountains in the world are up in the northern half adjacent to Tibet. All right, so now to the slide. Bear with me. Are you seeing the presentation now?
Mm-hmm.
Good. All right, so this is my cover sheet. Chanakpur is the city where I spent most of the time, and that's where we're going to begin the slideshow. Solukhumbu is the mountainous area where Mount Everest is, and that's where we're going to end up at the end. And so here's a map of the country again. Again, it's this whole southern area adjacent to India is very low lying, just a couple hundred feet above sea level. You see pictures, the terrain is flat. It looks like India. Culturally, it's very India. The typical Nepali culture, and a large part of the population comes from the Middle Hills, which are the sort of the green area in between the tan and the brown. That's where Kathmandu is, the capital. A few other large cities. Pokhara is famous as a tourist destination. And then if you go north, it becomes extraordinarily rough and high elevation. 8 of the 10 highest mountains in the world are in this stretch of the Himalayas. You have Mount Everest here. It's number 1. Over here is in the corner is Kanchenjunga. That's number 3. This number 2 is K2, which is in Pakistan, so not on here. And then there's, I guess the 4, 5, and 6 are all around in here, and you'll see pictures of them later. So it's only, it's less than 100 miles from this border up to this border, and you go from 100 feet above sea level or so to almost 30,000 feet. So you get lots of rough hills, extreme changes in elevation, very interesting country, culturally and geographically. All right. So this is Janakpur. This is where I was posted for 2 years. I was there as part of the youth development program, working with at-risk youth, trying to give them vocational skills, rather so they had something to do, a means to earn income. Very flat, like I said. It's known for having these pools, these big ponds, religious ponds. I think there's almost 100 or maybe just over 100 of these ponds of various sizes around the city. Means that there's a lot of mosquitoes too. Extremely hot, especially in May and June before the monsoon hits. It was above 100 degrees every day. Cooled down a little bit with the monsoon starting in late June through August, but still pretty hot. You get rains almost every day, sometimes overnight, often would flood roads. And then fall was generally really nice temperatures. Well, I guess it would have been even a little hot for us coming from New York, but comparably to what it was, not bad. Cold in the winter months, December, January, February, it could get down into the 40s. It would be kind of gray and misty, and people would wear mittens and knit hats. Anyway, so this is just a typical main intersection in the middle of town. You got a small temple here. During the day, it wouldn't be too busy. At nights, the streets would fill up. When looking through Lonely Planet recently, I found an interesting description of the city. It says, open sewers in the heart of the city, garbage burning in the streets, filthy green ponds, omnipresent broken roads. We hate to say it, but Janakpur is a cesspool. It's too bad because under its repellent surface lie some otherwise interesting sights. And that's very true. I really love Janakpur. I enjoyed my time there, but it could be pretty gross and tough to live in times. But there were some amazing cultural sites there, interesting culture, religion. It's a site of a famous pilgrimage site. So you get more Indians coming, or tourists coming from India than you do from the West. So I'm just gonna work through. Okay, so the first place that we're going here is the pride and joy of Janakpur. It's called Janaki Mandir. It's a big Hindu temple. Unlike a lot of temples you come across, it's well cared for. People congregate there all the time. It's this, so it's important religiously because it's the site of Janakpur is an ancient kingdom predating India and Nepal, the kingdom of Mithila. And the story is King Janak lived, maybe not in this particular building, but here, and his daughter was Janaki, who married the Hindu god Ram. If you're familiar with Hindu religion, he's one of the main gods. So his wife came from Janakpur. There's some religious stories that involve both of them, but that's why people come from all over India and Nepal to visit Janakpur, and it's an impressive site. Here's a couple more shots of what it's like to be around the temple. This is set up in front of it. They sell flowers and sweets and religious texts. People come through all the time to say a few prayers. This guy quite likely lives in Janakpur. He just rides through on his way to work to pay homage to God. So people are pretty religious in the area. This is another shot from the backside. Sometimes there's even hundreds of thousands of people that come into town to celebrate, so that can be a real mess and a pain to deal with. But this picture was taken during the monsoon. I can tell that because it's really kind of bright. After the rains, the dust and haze gets cleaned out of the air, and especially in the evenings, you'd often have really bright, amazing clouds, beautiful lights, and I'd love to go out and ride my bike and just see what kind of pictures I would find. So, take it. Whoops. What? I'm getting ahead of myself. All right. So, obviously, monsoon, sunset. You see the field is freshly plowed here on the right. I think in the foreground there's maybe a ox who probably plowed the field. It's a mix of both tractor dependent agriculture and people still use ox cart and ox to plow. So it's a real mix of the modern and the old.
Wow.
Here they are planting, mostly done by hand. They start with, they seed the rice into drained fields, this little plots, but plant them real close together. And then once they could plow and the field were ready, they'd pull out the little seedlings and then plant them in the fields. And the fields would stay irrigated. They'd stay wet for the entire time that the rice was there. There was plenty of water during that time of year. It would be June to September or something, and then they'd harvest. And
During the monsoon, does it just rain all the time, or does it rain some during the day and then stop? What is it like there?
it did not rain all the time. It rained a lot, but there'd be days where it wouldn't rain. There'd be nights that it would just rain constantly all night, and then you'd wake up. So I mean, mostly it didn't rain out of the total time, but it rained often, and so it was very wet during that time, and it was a real relief too, because I think I mentioned the heat before. It was, when it's 104, approaching 110, I'd say, and you're trying to ride your bike around town, you just can't wait for the rain to come. And these guys were, you see people moving families around on motorcycles, you know, moving beds and stuff on bikes. And you got 4 kids on this bike, which, you know, is a lot, but it's not, it wasn't a really strange sight. They just make use of whatever transportation they could. And these guys could pile on. All right, so this is just slightly out of the city. The city, physically, I'd say maybe about the size of Ithaca, the downtown part of Ithaca. Now, maybe the entire city of Ithaca without any hills, but it had a population of 160 to 70,000 people. So it's essentially, you know, like having Syracuse all compressed into in the footprint of Ithaca. So extraordinarily dense. But not very far out of town, you'd come across people living in these more traditional huts, thatch roofs. Even in town, there would be these scattered around. And one of the reasons that I show this picture is the women of the area, the Maitali women, did this really interesting artwork. Peacocks, elephants, oxen. They do these beautiful sort of surreal pieces of art on the sides of their cottages, their huts. And it was beautiful, a really wonderful way to brighten up their homes. And of course, you got the little kid there playing on, I'm not sure what he's playing on, some bamboo construction. All right, so this is one of the places that I was working. And evidently, I scanned this slide wrong because both, you may not know the Nepali alphabet.
That's
Whoops.
what I was going to ask you. What language is it? Is it like Sanskrit?
It's yeah, Sanskrit derived. It's very close. It's close to Hindi. Since since Janakpur is in Nepal, Nepali is one of the official languages, but there's also a local language to the area called Mithila, going back to the old kingdom, which people probably spoke more often just because that was their cultural ethnic language. But this if it were to be reversed, it would say Janakpur Nagarpalika, which means Janakpur City Hall. And for a while, I'd go in there trying to organize vocational carpentry training. It did, in fact, happen, but it was a real challenge to work with the city government. Not a whole lot happened in there. Mostly patronage jobs with people that really didn't need to perform anything good. This was, the mayor had his own car, and the sanitation drove these tractors around and picked up litter, and then you'd go into these offices and there'd people be sleeping there. So it was kind of depressing to try to work through the municipality.
Did most of the people wear Western garb?
Pardon me?
Most of the people, do they wear Western garb?
Yeah, especially the people that would be business attire, but there's plenty of people walking around with dhotis and some lungis, which is a cloth wrapped around the waist. You'll see some of that.
Thank you.
This is one of the things they did do. This is I forget if it's polio or vitamin A, but they do these vaccination or these supplements, vaccinations all over the city, and it was cool to participate in that because you really felt like you were doing something good. This is where I had lunch just about every day. It's a little hole in the wall, not too far from my house. But they had good food and I didn't get sick when I ate there. And so, you know, you find someone near a place that works and you keep going back because getting sick was definitely something that could happen.
Zach, what did you typically eat there?
Well, for lunch, I always ate rice and lentils with whatever vegetables were available. For dinner, I had a strategy where we cooked at home some. I lived with another volunteer. We'd make pasta and tomato sauce often, but I also made friends around the city, and I'd spread myself around so that I wasn't taking too much advantage of anyone, but also I was taking advantage of the food that that was cooked. All right, so this is a place that I probably spent more of my time than the municipality once I figured out how things worked there. Let me take 1 second. I want to yell at my son to make sure he gets on what he's doing. They're on. Go online. Okay. All right, thanks. So when I saw that the municipality didn't have a lot going on there, I decided to teach English at one of the local elementary schools. I figured it would be easy that, you know, there's plenty of opportunity and they're excited to have a native speaker. So this is the one that I ended up at. It was K through 6 or 7, I forget. And first I just went in and did some guest classes, and then they sort of got me to sign up to do it every day for the highest class. And I really got to know the kids well, really enjoyed working with them there. It was really rewarding working with the kids. But if you see, there's like a room that never got built onto the school. And okay, there's the kids first thing in the morning, they'd line up and sing the national anthem and do some calisthenics. But so they were really crammed into the classrooms. You might have, I think there was one fewer classrooms than they needed for the number of classes that were in the school. And so this might be grade 4 and 5 together. I don't remember exactly, or 5 and 6. And so after I gained a relationship with the administration and the teachers, they came to me about helping them build an addition. And I got a grant from my church that I grew up here, had some money. The Poplar Ridge Friends meeting donated a few $1,000s. It was like 2/3 or 3/4 of the cost. And then the local community came up with the remaining amount. So this is the final result here. Here's before. Notice the far right-hand side. After. So it's essentially the final room was built onto this foundation that had never been finished. And we painted it, got furniture. Actually, the ambassador came down to the opening, which was kind of neat. And the head of the Peace Corps. So I got to drive around with the ambassador for a day or two. And the community got to have adequate space in their school. So, here you go. This is the plaque, Peace Corps Partnership Program funded by Poplar Ridge Friends Meeting, year 2000, and then that's the Paula year there too. They're like 59 years ahead of what we are in our calendar. And here's the inside. New desks, new blackboards, everything. So that was really successful and fun. And on my way out, this was as I was leaving the country, they gave me a nice send-off. With a few gifts, and yeah, they made me really feel special. They, usually you get a tika, which is a little red thing on your forehead, and they got a little bit they went overboard, which you do when you're having fun, and they plastered my face with this powder.
What was a typical day there like?
Typical day. Okay. Once the first few months that you're at post, it can be hard to get things going. It takes a while for things to develop. But once things got going, I'd get up in the morning, I don't know, like 7, ride my bike downtown, get some fruit and yogurt for lunch, or no, for breakfast. Rode my bike to school about 10, I think, taught an English class or 2. At about noon, I'd ride to that place and have lunch, rice and lentils. And then 1 o'clock or so, I'd go to the Skill Development Center where the vocational training was happening for the at-risk youth. And I'd hang around there and try to inspire those teachers to get busy with the students. It was hard to make things happen there too, but they were better than the Nagarpalika. And then I'd finish up late afternoon. Maybe I'd go to the Central Park and play some soccer, and then find somewhere to eat, have dinner. And then my home did have a TV. I did have like BBC and CNN that I could watch at night. And I usually be in bed 9 or 10 o'clock underneath the mosquito net with the fan inside, and camp out there until the next day. So I mentioned that I tried to find some folks to help me cook and eat well. This is a couple people that I made friends with who worked at a NGO that was working on HIV/AIDS, and here they are helping me make chicken. I don't know if you might recognize this. Ended up being my wife. So that's Gopini. This is her friend. So this was my kitchen here. We had a sink, a little 2-burner stove, and then all concrete counter, nice enough. Refrigerator that works sometimes. All right, so this is a little bit of street life. This is where you might go buy vegetables. They'd have a little scale that with a rock or a weight, and they'd weigh out the vegetables based on the weight. This looks like some goat that they've butchered. So you could usually get goat, chicken, or buffalo. Definitely not cow, since Janakpur is very religious, and cows, of course, are holy in religion. Just some of the things that people do right on the street. You got a guy that set up his barber chair, and this is, does shaves and cuts right down the street. This guy on the right is selling tobacco. He's got a little tobacco cutter. And that was, chewing tobacco was something that almost all the guys did. And it was kind of gross because it really did a number on their teeth and their gums and stuff. But they definitely, almost everybody took part in that. In the background, you'll see some graffiti. At this time, there was a Maoist rebellion happening in the country. It hadn't really come to this part of the country so much. It was more up in the hills, but there's definitely was an undercurrent of strong sympathy for the Maoists in this area. Things got worse after I left Nepal, and then maybe in 2004, they signed a peace treaty and were brought into the government, and the Maoists have held the prime ministership for a while. They've been in and out of power, and they've just essentially become a regular political party. So the politics of Nepal are not great. They're very unstable, but at least there's not armed rebellion, bombs and shootings and massacres happening. All right. More random street scenes. These guys were probably musicians who played for a marriage or something like that. You'd see bands parading through the street, leading a groom or bride away from the ceremony. That was often the reason that musicians would be out playing like this. Here are a couple blacksmiths. Notice, yeah, no protective equipment, no shoes, just working away. Couple street scenes, not very much motorized traffic. Very few cars, that was just more officials, government officials, and not NGOs that would have cars around. People didn't have private cars for the most part. More motorcycles. I bet you now that there's way more motorcycles than there were when I was there. That's the kind of thing that people have really embraced and are using more and more. But you see bicycles, people pulling stuff on carts. Rickshaws was their taxi service. And of course, you get the sweepers here. There was a train in Janakpur. It was the one train in all the country. It was like a 30-mile train from India through Janakpur up to a smaller town. It was really in rough shape. Soon after I left, it went out of service. And as I understand, they've gotten a new, more modern electric train that's just started running since in the past year. So I guess that's some development they've had locally there. But this really was reminiscent of the typical Indian trains that you see with people hanging out the doors and on the roof, and just sort of rolling along at just at a speed just a little bit more than you could run at. So not very fast. There you are, some peanuts for sale. They are doing some road construction. Got a fire with, melting the tar, and the lady's wearing saris doing the work, and no power equipment. No story for this guy, just an interesting shot.
Looks like a sadhu.
Yeah, maybe a sadhu. Plenty of sadhus coming through town. Snacks, you get snacks like this. Everybody would drink tea a couple times during the day. That may be what is down in here. And you got all sorts of sweets and good stuff.
Bagel and then that's all.
All right, so there was a few holidays that came along. These were the girls in my class.
He did.
And I think there was a holiday where the women would dress up and dance, and it was I just couldn't resist taking a picture of all my students dressed up. This was another holiday, Saraswati Puja, which is Saraswati is the goddess of education. So all the schools and learning institutions would buy one of these statues and sort of worship it, do puja to it, respect it, put it in a place of honor, and then at the end of the holiday, they'd take it to one of the ponds and leave it there. But they're really interesting pieces of art, actually. This guy was really talented. All right, so this is a little bit of a trigger warning. Next one is a holiday where there involves goat sacrifice. And it was just one of the more surreal experiences I had. This is the temple to Ram is where they do this, and there was probably a few thousand goats lined up with their owner, where they'd bring them in during Desai. Desai is the holiday. It's sort of one of the biggest of the year at harvest time, and they bring them into the temple, and the temple would lop off their head, and that then they take the goat back and prepare it for the family. So so they would eat, the meat that was being offered to the gods. But when you're doing several thousand goats, it makes for a really strange thing to see, because you see the people working there get splattered with blood, and it gets all over the place. So the goats were eaten, though. It was all for not so different than what we do for Thanksgiving, except for they were taking the goats to the slaughterhouse. All right, so this is the end of the monsoon. The rice is grown now, and they're out harvesting. And yeah, just a nice shot. Couple more people shots. People that I just came along in the road and thought looked interesting. One of my favorite shots that I took. I don't even remember exactly where it was, but the shot really came out nicely. And this was taken off the top of my house. I had a little pond out back, and I looked out one time at sunset, and there was a fisherman floating around on a inner tube, throwing a net out, and the light was just right. It turned out beautifully as well. So that was Janakpur. We're going to shoot about 80 miles to the north, and this was a 2-week or so trek that I went on with a friend. It's called, the area is called Solukhumbu. And that's the national park that has Everest and Lhotse and Nutsi. Those are all in the top 10 tallest mountains in the world. You can walk in, which will take another extra 2 weeks from Kathmandu, or fly into Lukla, which is pretty much the highest airport. It's the main gateway to the Everest region. And I was kind of blown away to see that it was on, I looked on YouTube. It's one of the top 10 most dangerous airports in the world, which you see, when you see how it's configured, you're not surprised. Notice the angle of the plane here. This is the runway that it's about to shoot down. It's a long enough runway to get speed to get airborne, but there's a drop off at the far end, and so you got to make sure you're going fast enough. And then when you fly in from the other direction, you hit the runway. And on this side here, on the right side, there's pretty much a rock wall of a mountain. So if you miscalculate, there's not really a way to go around. You got to make sure you hit it right. So the plane is heading down the runway, and you can see again that the angle of the runway. And this is about as flat as area as you can find in the area. Let's see. I put someone to sleep.
Yep.
Yeah. Them-
Okay, well, let me see if I can figure out who that is. All right, maybe that was Helen. All right, so you can see the elevation here.
I thought I was hitting things.
The elevation is 9,383 feet. That's the beginning point. And by the end of the trek, I think I'm at about 18,000 feet. So doubling in height. And this is I didn't take this picture. I got this off the internet, but this is the area that the hike ends up in. You can see how rugged and high it is. It's
Just beautiful.
enormously rugged. Anyways, so you start at Lukla, and it's a pretty long day to get to the next stop. The way you handle elevation is you can, I think it's about 3,000 feet you can go up, and then you have to rest a couple days, 1 or 2 days at least. And I always found you got to make sure to hydrate a lot because you lose a lot of moisture that way. And yeah, pay attention. If you're not feeling well, go back down. I did feel some altitude sickness. I think when I arrived at the highest that I went, I was sick for the day, upset stomach, headache, but it subsided and I was okay. But it's a pretty well trod trail. The bridges are all pretty newly built. It's such an important trekking area. You see the bridge down here on the left, and this is where the bridge when you get to it. You got to be careful about coming across the bridge because a lot of times there's pack animals coming the other way, and they're really loaded down, so there's not a whole lot of space on the bridge with them. So you don't want to meet them midway and either get forced to go back or get pushed over the edge. The trail is pretty well maintained and easy to follow. And then you come to the national park entrance. And soon after that, oh, you gotta pay, I forget how much you gotta pay, probably maybe $30 or $40 to get a permit to go in. And then you continue down the trail, and this was the first view of Everest that I had. The mountain here, and often it had that familiar plume of snow and ice coming off the top of it. But it's kind of neat. You're hiking and you're walking and slowly watching the Everest get closer and closer. Namche Bazaar is the place we spent the first night from Lukla. So that's just over about 2,000 feet gain in that journey. And Namche Bazaar is the last really good-sized town that you're in. You can get just about anything that you'd want. There's, it's set up, all the serious mountaineering exhibitions stop and stay there for a while. They've got bars, they've got pool tables, and you can get anything to eat. Well, within reason, you can get anything to eat there. But it's pretty luxurious if you want to pay the money. You notice there's a different look to the people up here. This is much closer to Tibet, and the ethnic Nepalis here are the Sherpas, or there's other Mongolian castes. So it's different than the people in Jaunipur who look very Indian. Again, this is the going shopping. You got some kind of meat here on the left, and this little kid worked at one of the hotels, and he went out and got some Coke to supply his hotel. So you could easily get Coke or beer or anything here. It was just be 4 or 5 times as expensive as you'd expect at other, at just along the road in a normal place. So I hadn't really intended to get a porter when I flew in. I was with my friend. We thought we might carry our bags, but once we sort of felt the altitude and were approached by a guy that offered to be our porter, we decided we'd go for it. And he is actually carrying both my bag and my friend's bag. So he's got two big bags, and we each have a smaller backpack. That said, he would find out where we were going for the next night and just take the bags and go off at his own pace, much faster than we were. We'd eventually show up where we were going. He'd be sitting there smoking cigarettes, having a little whiskey, and be ready to outdistance us again the next day. So he was much more fit and acclimated to the altitude than we were.
Oh, my.
We're up higher here now, not beyond the tree line, I don't think, but not many trees. Very wide open. There's a river. It's a river valley off to the right. Again, now we're closer to Everest there with the familiar cloud, and getting close to this really striking looking mountain. It's called Ama Dablam. One of the real archetypal, beautiful mountains that you see anywhere. It's only 22,000 feet. So for the Himalayas, it's not anything especially remarkable, but it's anywhere else in the world, it would be an amazing towering peak.
Wow.
So some of the, just a lot of stone and air and earth. Very clear up here, beautiful. This is a yak. the X, you got to a point where other livestock weren't around. It was only yaks.
What elevation were you at when you hit the snow line?
You know, I think it would have been above, about 17,000 feet.
Okay,
So, that's a good question because, you think 17,000 feet, that's higher than anywhere in the continental United States, and any mountain here would have, or the mountains here would have be snowed at, have snow at the top at that height. You got to keep in mind that Nepal is at the same latitude as Miami is, so it's way far south, and so the snow line is way higher than it would be here. If Everest was, I've heard people say that if Everest were at the same latitude as we are here in New York State, it might be unclimbable just because of the conditions at the top. I don't know. People do amazing things. I imagine we'd find a way to do it, but it's a totally different thing to climb a mountain at Miami's latitude than it is farther north.
so were you walking in snow for several thousand feet?
No, during this point, there's no snow. It was actually pretty comfortable during the day. And of course, we're not, at this point, we're only at 12 or 13,000 feet.
Okay, well, 12 or 13,000 feet. I didn't feel the altitude till I got to a 13,000 footer.
Uh-huh.
Between 12 and 13, you start feeling it.
Right, and then you'd slow down and take your time. But the snow didn't start until it was about 16, 17,000 feet. You'd see some, but even
So, so did you walk in the snow? Did you have to walk in the snow when you were up at that high?
a little bit. At that point, we were doing day hikes out of a lodge.
Oh, okay.
We weren't carrying a bunch of equipment or anything. It was just trips up the mountain to check out a view here or there. This was actually in December that I did this trek. So it was winter time, but at this elevation, it still warmed up during the day, and then it would get very cold at night. And higher up, it didn't warm up as much, maybe up to 40 or something, and then it got really cold at night, but it was never bone chilling. Cold.
Yes, some people know.
So
What
there's
time of
another,
year is this again? Sorry to interrupt. What time of year is this?
it's December.
So
One
did you,
second, I got my wife going. Hello? I think so. I'm in the middle of a presentation. Okay.
did you have a tent that you slept in at night, or did
No, there was always, it's tea house trekking is what they call it. And periodically along the trail, there's always a place to stay.
And was it a dormitory style sleeping?
You could get dormitory or individual rooms.
Okay.
Yeah. Just 1 second. Let me yell at my son again. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Leon? You on?
How is everybody?
Good, thank you for asking. Good.
I hope I didn't put anybody else to sleep. But I'll keep
No.
going here. All right, so just some more mountain views. The distances and spaces are deceiving. This is not an exceptionally far away town over here, but it's across the valley that would take maybe 1 or 2 days to get to if you were to try to go from side to side. It's just so far down and so far up.
What is that?
It's a settlement that's carved off on the side of this hillside. These are
Is that a
these are-
river that we're seeing? A river that we're seeing on the left side of the picture, or?
this.
Yes,
I think that's like maybe a glacial melt field that may be frozen water coming off the mountain. Yeah, I mean, there may be glaciers up in here. This is certainly a glacier up here.
yeah.
Yeah, wherever there's a flat area, people likely would, well, in the old, in years before tourism was so common, they'd be up here doing either agriculture or bringing up livestock to feed. Now there's more tourists coming through, and so there's a need for housing and restaurants and stuff like that.
Well,
Oh, some more rugged views of the mountain. And these are probably approaching 25,000 feet. So not massive by Himalayan standards, but pretty high. This is looking back down the valley that we came up. I think Namche Bazaar would have been around one of these shoulders, and Lukla would have been down here somewhere. The river valley filled up with clouds. All right, so there I am at 20 years ago. I think this was some shepherd's home, or maybe a seasonal place that he'd stay and keep his livestock while when the grazing was good up here. This is about as high as the trees came. This is soon after the trees totally died out. It's getting more and more rugged, less vegetation, more ice and snow fields. So this is my friend. This is at the edge of a glacier. So this is about as high as we stayed at night. 15,500 feet. And it was an interesting river valley. About 90% of it was filled up with this glacier. You see here, this is all ice with stone and dirt mixed in with it. And it was miles long running down the valley. And then on this side over here, wherever there would be a little indentation between the mountains, there'd be a lake will form there. And there was a chain of, I don't know, like 4 or 5 lakes that are all beautiful blue turquoise lakes. And this is as high as you could go and live in and stay overnight in a lodge. And then you take day hikes and go up the mountains and look at the views. This is one of the lakes down here on the bottom that I was mentioning. More high mountains. All right, and so this is 16,000 feet or so, and this is Mount Everest. This is about as close as we got to it. Doesn't have the cloud of snow flying off the top of it, but this is a big glacier that originates at its base, and it's so steep that a lot of the snow does fly off it or fall down it. rather than stick to it. Again, Everest is here, this huge glacier. Van, what about your lesson? Hurry up, it's past 2. Sorry.
Oh,
All
nice.
right. So again, here's one of the lakes. The glacier is running down the rest of the valley over here. And it was kind of surreal to sit on the side of it. It'd always be like gravel falling and these pongs and there's pings and rattling here and there because it was moving very slowly, but you know, almost imperceivably. But there was always a pop or this or that going on somewhere or other, kind of haunting.
Oh,
Beautiful lake.
Gorgeous.
See the turquoise water. I was out collecting. He was out collecting yak dung for the stove that they had. Yeah, you didn't really see any wildlife at this height except for crows or ravens. They have a lot of territory. Oh, and you can see that the lodge is over here on the far side of the lake. This is where we would be staying for a few days while we're at the maximum height of our trek. And there's the glacier is running on the back side here of this little hill. All right, so that's me 20 years ago with about as long as hair as I've ever had. My friend, and then our porter.
Nice.
This is a little, there's a peak, small peak to climb at near the lodge called Gokyo-ri. And this may be as high as we went, just over 17,500 feet, which is about the height of the Everest base camp. So this would be the start of the climbing of the mountain. It's hard to believe that you got to go up almost twice the height of where this point is. Hard to imagine the Everest is that tall.
wow.
When you were getting ready to go on that trip, you said you had to take a few days to get acclimated every 3,000 feet.
Yeah.
So you'd have to do that several times to get up as high as you were.
Right. I forget how many days that we didn't travel on, but probably maybe 3 days. The distance was not that far. You go slow because of the altitude, and it's really tiring to climb and the oxygen at those levels. It's like a third of what the oxygen here is. Actually, I take that back. That may be far higher up in the mountain, but it is noticeably less. You really take a few steps and you have to stop and gasp, and you go slow and prone to respiratory issues and headaches too if you're not careful. The thing is, there are nice places to stop. I mean, you have to pay. You pay for things that are premium, but you can get good food, comfortable places to sleep. They're warm. They have stoves that they'll keep going while people are awake. Anyways, at night it might get cold after people sleep. But yeah, if you wanted to pay for a Coke or have a beer or whatever, you just have to, suck it up and pay for it. But you could get it.
I've been up one 13,000 footer in the Rockies, in the American Rockies. That's as high as I've been. And I know that you have to walk somewhat slower. I can imagine that you have to walk up, how slow you walked up at 17,000 feet.
Yeah, and for the Rockies, the 13,000 is a pretty impressive thing.
Well, that they have 13,000 footers up in the Rockies.
Right.
That's it.
So here's the view from the top of that small peak I told you that I climbed. Again, the glacier is here, taking up most of the valley. There's one of the lakes, beautiful green lakes. There's a river that originates here and runs all the way down the side of beside where the trail is. And beautiful cloud formations.
Were you able to walk on any of the glaciers?
There are places where you can cross them to get they scout them out, and you can some places you need to go across them, but I didn't go on them.
Okay. Because they have
What
places in the
height
Rockies.
was there any vegetation?
Pardon me? What about
What
vegetation?
height was there any vegetation?
Well, I'm looking at this picture right here. There's a little bit of vegetation here, and this is at 17,500 feet. But that's just a tuft of grass. I would say that the tree stopped at about 15 or between 15 and 16,000.
Okay,
And you know, the vegetation was getting smaller and smaller as you approach that height.
Was there potable water?
There must have been.
We had a pump, we had a filter that we brought. But again, you could get a Coke, you could buy bottled water. It just would be expensive.
And a lot of people would drink bottled or boiled water, right? In the
Yeah,
form of-
right. You'd go to a lodge and you'd get a tea or a hot lemon or something, you know, get your
Electrolytes.
hydration through something boiled, which was good for the hydration and also satisfying because you're cold.
Were the yaks up that high as well?
They were pretty close to that height. I don't think that they climb a mountain necessarily on their own unless they're, you know, forced to, but they were up at 16, 17,000 feet. Yeah. Here's the end of the lake. You can see that, I mean, there's snow around. There was never very much, but I remember a few years prior to this, there had been a huge, massive snowstorm up in this area, trapping, you know, scores of people, and it was, you know, I don't know if people died, but it was like a major emergency response to get people out of here. So it's, you know, the high mountains are unpredictable, and they can, at any time, they can dump feet of snow on you. I believe that behind this jagged stone mountain, you know, smaller peaks, this is Chao Yu, the fourth highest mountain in the world. So there's, along with Everest, there's a number of extraordinarily high mountains right there nearby. Okay. We're almost done here. This is the return trip. I like that picture.
Nice.
And then, yeah. So thank you all for indulging me.
Oh, thank you. I actually, when I was in the Peace Corps in Thailand, I came back through Nepal and we took a trek from Pokhara to Muktana. And
Okay.
actually ran into some people that, a group of Americans who were actually had been trying to climb Annapurna. And there was a big avalanche, like 3 of the people were killed. Yeah,
Oh, wow, that must have been pretty raw for them to
yeah,
just
yeah.
experience that.
I mean, I imagine that you saw a lot of people climbing Mount Everest too, right?
Well, the Everest, the expeditions didn't go up that river valley.
Oh.
We went up Gokyo, called Gokyo, because the view was, it was, you could see the mountain nicely. It's ironic, if you go to base camp, you can't see Everest, I don't think. I think you're right in close to another mountain and you can't see the actual peak from there. So there are other places to view Everest from, but the expeditions would have been going up a different side. And I don't know that they don't do a whole lot of climbing in that time of year. The main season is May. That's when most people summit. So I don't know if people are on the mountain or not, but I did see a big avalanche come down a mountain one time I was striking, and it's just scary and it's amazing. And anything else? Other questions?
Thank
Yeah,
you,
but
that was
well,
fascinating.
Zach, would you, can you exit the share screen
Yeah.
so we can see everybody? Yeah. Okay, I have a couple questions. First of all, what is the major religion in Nepal?
Hinduism,
Hinduism.
probably 80 to 90% Hinduism. Maybe that's a little high, but mostly Hindu. That's sort of what they had a monarchy was the world's only Hindu-based monarchy. They don't have a monarchy anymore, but it's still the primary religion. Buddhism's pretty prevalent as well, and down in the Terai, in the flat area where I was, there was I don't know, maybe 10% Muslim.
And how did you happen to wind up in Nepal as in the Peace Corps? Had you studied Nepali, or how did you wind up there?
Serendipity, I guess. That
Your camera.
I had been to Nepal when I studied abroad back in college. I don't know that had anything to do with it. When I went into Peace Corps, I was just to the point I was interested in going anywhere. I would have gone anywhere. That I was sort of letting fate take over to take me to someplace interesting. But I was really pleased when they proposed Nepal, and I think they proposed that because I had the carpentry background that I had been doing for a couple of years prior to going, and they needed the vocational training. So it was a good fit.
So did they train you? Did the Peace Corps train you in the language?
Yeah. The first three months in country were training, which almost every day, about half the day was spent doing language. And you get more adept and they do homestays, and there's some technical and cultural stuff, but really the language is the primary thrust of that time.
And I'm assuming it was Nepali, not the local version, right?
Yeah, yep. Yeah, it was Nepali because there's people in, I was in the 185th group of people, of Peace Corps volunteers going. Usually they had 2 to 3 groups going per year, and that's going back to 1962. Most of the people were teachers, and so they were going all over the countryside, particularly the hill regions where Nepali would have been the most appropriate. The youth development volunteers, there was 9 of us or so, and again, all over Nepal. So Nepali was the most obvious language, even though if it was just me training to go to Jaunipur, Maithili, the local language maybe would have been more appropriate. But
So you were there just to teach the youth carpentry skills? And if so, did you actually use some of those skills and teach them when you were building that addition to the school?
yeah, my primary thing was the vocational carpentry training. I wasn't the main instructor. I had an idea of about carpentry and what tools they might need and stuff, but I didn't know the techniques that well, and it was mostly done by hand, which it's hard work, and it's a real skill. So I had a local guy that did the actual instruction, and I sort of oversaw the training and brought in different things into the curriculum, like English and math and life skills, and did some trainings on HIV/AIDS. As far as that, working with the school edition, the actual construction, no, mostly that's mostly masonry, although there are shutters and doors, but that was done by a contract. I did bring in my former students to repair the desks and some of the furniture that were in the school, which was it was nice to both repair that because they needed repair and to give the guys some work and experience.
Mhm.
Did you bring tools with you?
Sorry?
Did you bring tools with you?
No.
No.
No, the Kathmandu, pretty much any city. I got the power tools in Kathmandu, and they had anything that I could want. And hardware stores around the city provided the rest of the equipment. So no, I didn't need anything of my own.
Good.
Have you been back there?
Did you?
Have you been back there to the town since you left the Peace Corps? Because your wife comes from there. Have you traveled back to Nepal?
Yes, it's been a long time though. I was there when my son was 2, and he's 14 now, so it's been 12 years.
Did you see a change in the town or no?
Yeah, I mean, things are, in that amount of time, there was more cars on the road. It seemed like it was more polluted, more buildup. And I can only imagine that's, that
I
was
can imagine. Now I can imagine how your wife felt when she came to the United States. She must have been really had a culture shock.
Yeah, well, it certainly is kind of culture shock and trying to get, figure out how you fit into this new, society, culture, whatever. For me, it was culture shock to come back after 2 years. Everything seemed
imagine.
Things changed so.
fast.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I mean, Nepal is still such a geographically isolated country that I'm sure that, there isn't as much outside influence, I wouldn't think, as there are in other parts of the world.
well, I mean, the influences are more from India and now
Right.
from China to some extent, but I mean, the Western culture is permeating, just about everywhere in the world. And Nepal is, I mean, it's a long way off, but it's open. There's internet, there's TV. They're not trying to keep the outside world out. Even their neighbor Bhutan, I think they've had a different philosophy on development
Really awesome.
and allowing tourists in. You go to Bhutan, you got to spend like $100 and something per day. In Nepal, when I was there, the visa cost, I think $30 for a month. I'm sure it's gone up from that, but it's taken the idea that it's inviting a lot of people to come in, and lots of people, open things up to many people rather than asking fewer people to pay more.
So you just also mentioned that the Maoists are in power now, and I didn't quite know what that meant in terms of what that looked like in terms of politics.
Well, they came into power. They're out of power again. There's a lot of factions. There is the current prime minister is from the Communist Party, but not the Maoist Communist Party. They sort of combine and diverge all the time, so it's hard to know exactly who's with who. Philosophically, I'm not, they're probably not as open. They don't want to open the economy as some of the more right parties, but they're not pushing, Maoist communist ideology or, transform the economy. I don't think it's all market based. It may have issues more with like land reform and things like that, but I don't think they're contemplating like totally shutting down, changing the way that things are set up.
So what is the source of most people's income? Is it work on farms, or, well, I guess not, if it's market-based. Is it tourism, or what is it?
It is remittances from the Middle East, from Malaysia, Europe and America too, but I think half of the economy is based on money being sent back from outside. Outside of that, so outside of that, tourism was the one of the main things, but the pandemic has really devastated that sector, of course. At this point, you could go to Nepal, but you'd have to sit in quarantine for 2 weeks. So who wants to fly halfway around the world to sit in a hotel? And it's too bad. I feel bad for the all the people that are dependent on that. Besides that, agriculture to some extent, handicrafts, hydro. They have a lot of hydro development. Those are the main parts of the economy.
Who do they sell power to?
India. Yeah, India has lots of need, and Nepal has a lot of potential. I don't know that they've harnessed it as well as possible. It's a lot of graft and mismanagement, but there's many projects that are coming online, so that's starting to really grow.